I'd rather be lucky than good. We didn't coordinate talks at all, and I appreciate the presentation there from Mr. German. I think you've done an excellent job as far as adding multiple modes of action into your program to prevent resistance. And I think I kind of cover that in here as what we should have been doing. But unfortunately, across the Mid-South, not everybody has employed that type of program. I got to tell a story real quick before I get started. When we were getting to know each other, he told me he was from Summerville, and as many as you know, my wife is from West Tennessee. And on our honeymoon, we were barreling our way toward Middle Tennessee, and we headed south and then toward Middle Tennessee and beyond for a honeymoon, and we got a safe driving award going through Summerville. And when the cop pulled me over, the truck was covered in just married and junk hanging from it everywhere, and he said, "Son, you in a hurry to get somewhere?" And I looked at him and I said, "What do you think?" He didn't like that. So he wrote me up. Unfortunately, across the Mid-South, not everybody's had the kind of resistance management program that Mr. German, Willie just talked about. For several years now, some of it unbeknownst to me. Honestly, in my home state of Arkansas, I thought we were doing a little better job than we were. But what we are finding across the Mid-South is that we have been relying very heavily on the PPO chemistry in order to go ahead and stay in Roundup Ready beans and in order to produce conventional beans. The field, and this is a field of beans that you're looking at right here in Woodruff County, was actually a conventional field of beans. And his weed control program for several years was Valor Pre, followed by an early post-shot Flexstar. That's it. This year I was called in to look at it after the Flexstar went out, carpeted pigweed. They were barely burned, injured a little bit, and the grower said, "I'm fixing to come back and hit them with Blazer. I'm going to take them out the old-fashioned way with Blazer." And I said, "Sir, Blazer's the same mode of action as Valor, same mode of action as Flexstar. I think you're wasting your money." He said, "I don't care. I got to try to do something." So the next time I came back up a week later, he had put out the Blazer. He got about 30% control of his beans and 5% control of the pigweed, if I had to rate it. So I knew at that point that we thoroughly had a problem with PPO resistance in the state. And that was one of the first populations that we really confirmed. And then they just started coming out of the woodwork. I'll get to that in a second. Here's a list of herbicides for soybeans. These numbers on the right represent herbicide modes of action. Are y'all all aware numbers represent modes of action? Okay. I've had this slide in my talk for years, and I've tried to explain that, you know, whether you're in conventional going Valor followed by Flexstar, or you're in Roundup Ready going Valor followed by Flexstar plus glyphosate, if you've got a glyphosate resistant weed, you're only using one mode of action because the other one doesn't work. All right? So you're using 14 followed by 14. And we've had about 12 counties now where the PPO resistance has showed up, and I've been shocked to find that essentially Valor followed by Flexstar was the program, plus glyphosate. And it may have been in Vive, which has group 2 ALS chemistry in it. We're already resistant to that, so that really wasn't helping. We were still 14 followed by 14. So this was very, very common, much more common than I thought it was. To give you a little update on this Woodruff pigweed population, we took it to the greenhouse. These are seeds that were harvested from that picture that I showed you at first. And we screened them against different PPO chemistry. One of the first things we wanted to know, is it in fact resistant to Flexstar Post? The tray on the left is an untreated check. In all these pictures, the tray on the left is an untreated check. The one on the right is whatever the treatment says. So this is 14 days after the post application of 16 ounces of Flexstar, and you can see the survival that we've gotten in that particular population. All the companies started calling when they found out we had this. Well, what about our pre-emerge products? What's this mean for Valor and for, you know, Reflex and all of this kind of chemistry and Sharp and the Authority products? You know, what's it mean? Is it still going to kill it pre? Because there are some types of resistance, like with facet and barnyard grass. You know, we have resistance post, but we still have a lot of pre-activity. And we saw something similar to that when we looked at this. And granted, this is greenhouse work. We did this in a hurry. These seeds were just harvested last fall, so we hadn't had a chance to go back in and actually do it in the field. So keep in mind it's greenhouse work. But you can see this is 16 ounces of Reflex applied pre. And again, this is 14 days after that pre was applied. You can see the survivors there versus the untreated check. It thinned out the herd, but I'll get into some actual numbers here in a second. There's Valor at 2 ounces pre, had some survivors. Spartan Charge, which is sulfentrazone or the Authority brand, survivors there. And then the newest PPO probably to be on the market, Sharpen at a high rate for beans pre 2 ounces. You see we had survivors there. We backed up and looked at Prowl. This is in an area that had a long history of squadron use and Treflan use and all that kind of stuff, and we got about 50% control of Prowl. I think they actually look better where we thinned them out a little bit in the Prowl, but DNAs aren't going to help us in the field. We put some Classic and Scepter. I just mixed a little bit together and did kind of a squirt and look. They're ALS resistant as well in the field. I didn't include that one in the greenhouse. So what did work? You know, the only clean tray, the only truly clean tray that we had in this plot or in this study was actually Boundary, which is a combination of dual metribuzin, and it had the 2-pint rate. I forget how much of each one you get. I think it's about 5 ounces of metribuzin, and the rest is dual, and that's close to that. But it took that combination. And this is, in fact, the only 2 pre-emerge modes of action that we have left now in that field that have activity on this pigweed. So choices are getting very limited in some of these fields, but that's the one that worked. So some of those look pretty good. If you look at this is 100% emergence in the check, you can see we did have various reductions here with this given chemistry, but just take a look. I mean, look at the best one, which was Valor. You got a 90% reduction. It left 10% in there, but you got to keep in mind our average number when they first emerged, there was about 250 pigweed in those trays, and we had about 25 of them per square foot survive. So even at 90% control, 25 pigweeds per square foot is still a tremendously growed up, not going to harvest it mess. All right, so even though we had some good activity due to the amount of seed and everything that was in there, that it really doesn't come out that good when you look at it as a herbicide option. What do you got to look for out in the field? I want to thank Larry Steckel for this picture. I put it real, highlighted it down there where you could see it. This is what everybody was seeing where they saw PPO failures, Flexstar failures in soybeans, basically. Necrosis of the leaves that were out at the time of application, and then when that new growth comes out, nice and green, obviously not translocated, that's what the resistant biotypes look like when they're first evolving. So any of you guys walking fields, if you saw this scattered around in some of your fields that otherwise look pretty good, beware, because that's an early sign of resistance. So here's the most current map that I have. I'm not going to promise this is the most up-to-date map. I'll tell you that myself, Jason Norsworthy, Larry Steckel over in West Tennessee, Nelda Burgos at Arkansas. Jason, have you contributed some samples? Yeah, 5 to this. 5 counties need to be added in Mississippi. Okay, I knew it wasn't up to date.
Sunflower, Bolivar, Kahoma, Tunica, and DeSoto.
All right, so right where we would kind of expect them.
And Bob, that's honestly, that's just the counties we sample, man. You know, you go like to LaFleur County, which is right below Sunflower County, and I mean, we just didn't have any samples from LaFleur County.
Right. These are most of the counties we sample too, by the way. The reason Crittenden there is lit up, we didn't have any right here at first, and then one came in kind of late. And Jason Norsworthy, I took mine from Woodruff County, he took his from Crittenden that we took to the greenhouse and did some more work on. So obviously we need to update this map. I'm assuming the Boot Hill wasn't sampled, and I think that's maybe northern Kentucky or southern Illinois. I'm not sure where that's at right there. One population. So take a look at this map, those of you that are in decision-making positions with what you decide to do on farms next year and how you decide to farm, because whether you had resistance or not, I want you to think about this. I want to take you back to 2007. This is the first screening that we did. We sent a graduate student out, Ryan Daugherty. He burned up a bunch of U of A gas and just randomly sampled pigweed. This is after we had confirmed one in the fall of 05. We got a student on it. In the fall of 07, he went out and sampled, and that was our distribution of glyphosate-resistant pigweed. By 08, it looked like that, and by 2010, it was in every agricultural county in Arkansas. So about 3 years, 4 years from the time we found it until it thoroughly infested us and left us where we were at. This resulted in about a 25% increase from 0 to 25% of use of Liberty Link soybeans in Arkansas. It resulted in a 100% increase in the use of residual herbicides in Arkansas and other states as well. I'm not just excluding everybody else. But I just want y'all to keep that in mind as we look at this map that just popped up this year. And if we don't change and we don't do anything, I don't see any reason why this won't happen with PPO resistance the same way that it did with glyphosate. Jason Norsworthy provided me this data, and I'm not going to dwell on it, but this is the percent survival of the seedlings. The yellow bar is a susceptible population that we've kind of had on ice since 1986. It's susceptible to everything. I mean, it's never had any resistance pressure put on it or whatever, so it's a great population to study and compare to populations we have now. That Gregory population that I just showed you the picture of is the orange bar. The white bar is that Crittenden County one that Jason is looking at. This is Valor. Here's the 1X rate. Here's an 1/8 X rate. So we started getting control of the old population around an 1/8 to 1/4 of an X rate. And up here we're having 65–70% survivors. So you can see the level and the fold increase. And even if you look at the total number of survivors, that's about what those greenhouse trays look like. Just another way of kind of presenting that data and showing that the two populations are responding very similarly across Valor, across Reflex and FlexStar, across sulfentrazone, some differences maybe between these populations, and then across Sharpen. So we feel like these populations that we've tested, we know from Pat Trammell's test, they all have the resistant gene. So we feel like we're probably dealing with basically that same type or mechanism of resistance with all these populations. So back to Woodruff County. Here's back to my pigweed field that I'm going to be in next summer, trying to figure out how to control all this. Here's the chemistry: glyphosate, ALS, PPO, DNAs. They're gone on this farm. They're absolutely gone. All that pigweed you see went to seed, millions and millions and millions of seed. The bottom line is you just can't grow conventional. This was a conventional bean farmer or Roundup Ready beans in this field anymore. We just don't feel like we can. You had a great program. in your talk, Mr. German, you talked about overlapping residuals. That'd be the only way that you might be able to do it. But you had one slide in there where you said, if it didn't work, we'd come back with Prefix or FlexStar. Not here. Not here. There's no backup plan here. Okay? You might assume that my recommendation is to jump into Liberty Link beans, but honestly it's not. My recommendations for this year for these growers that have PPO resistance are as follows. Get the hell out of beans. Grow something else. Let's change this thing up a little bit. If you can put rice in, let's put a flood on it and get them that way. If you can do corn, let's use atrazine and the HPPD chemistry. Let's make a change in our overall production strategy, even grain sorghum, where we can use atrazine and still also the dual type products is great. Start clean. We got a lot of PPOs now. Guys are going back. When the PPOs first came out, we started using Valor. Everybody used it in a burn down for mare's tail. Late January, early February, worked great. It's valuable. Some people even used it in the fall. I could never make that pay, but guys liked it clean going into the next spring. I understand that. So we're already seeing a lot of guys that are backing up and putting out their Valor containing product or whatever earlier as a pre-plant and saving the true pre-emerge for a residual herbicide like dual or Zidua in combination with metribuzin, to which we have no resistance documented right now, thankfully. The other thing we're recommending in beans is to look at your row spacing and plant type and population. You mentioned row spacing on 20-inch rows, I think. Our data shows that anything you can do to increase plant population, that gets into seed cost issues and stuff like that. Narrow up row spacing and even plant type. There are certain types of soybeans out there that grow up like a stovepipe, and they never do canopy that ground very good. We got to get into some bushier type beans that will canopy quickly in these fields if we want to use that row spacing and stuff to our advantage. If you are going to grow beans, I do recommend Liberty Link soybeans. You know, Liberty's no Roundup. It never has been as good as Roundup used to be, and it never will be. There's a lot of restrictions. I mean, you got to apply it early. Little bitty beans, you need a good sunny day. No nighttime applications. Man, I busted some guys' bubbles in Arkansas that they were spraying all night with Roundup, and they loved it. Gramoxone, Steckel, Culpepper, and those guys, they've pretty much shown that's a no-no with Liberty. The other thing is, I'm not a big fan of Liberty plus dual early post, or Liberty plus prefix. Somebody mentioned the burn with Liberty Warrant. Well, I think you can burn it with Liberty Dual or Liberty Prefix too if you're not careful. But if you've got all this resistance we've talked about, how many modes of action am I using on that first flush of pigweed if I put that out right there? I'm using one. I'm using Liberty, because if it's already emerged and it's PPO resistant, the dual is not going to work because it's up, and the FlexStar is not going to work because it's resistant. So we got to get in that. We got to get that Liberty Link pre moved up to a pre. Based on talking to our seed dealers and the 8 or 9 grower meetings I've already been to this year, I think we're going to see another 25% increase in Liberty Link beans this year. I think we'll be up to 50% or more based on the guys that I've talked to. And I want to see residuals used out in front of them. You don't have resistance, then what you showed, I love it. Stay in that overlapping residual program and try to not let this thing ever get on your farm to begin with if you can help it. So that's where our talks went good together. You know, Enlist, I think there's already been a lot of Dow talks and presentations here today. I'm not going to get too far off into what's coming. My biggest thing is I don't feel like right now with the label setback on Enlist Duo that we can really count on having this technology. So I think as you're planning for this coming year, and what I've been telling producers is you better plan on using the tools we have. And that goes for Enlist or Extend. Who knows when China's going to get off their butt and approve Extend. You know, we've been looking at these technologies. I'm concerned about dicamba. You know, it's extremely sensitive to non-traded soybeans and drift and tank clean out, and all that stuff's going to be an issue. We don't know a lot about the varieties. We haven't had them in our yield trials yet. But I support both of these technologies, and I'm tired of caving into the anti-GMO crowd. I'm ready to turn them loose, and I want to let the farmers decide. The market will decide whether these technologies will fly or not. If there's too much drift, if the varieties don't yield or whatever, guys like Mr. German will figure it out. So they both kill pigweed. They both do an excellent job, and I'm at the point now where these guys call, I just tell them I'm ready to register them, get off their butt, get a label. They work so good they actually scare me a little bit, and I've been going over this with growers, and y'all tell me if I'm way off track here or not, but they don't, the companies, and I'm glad they don't like me showing this. They don't even like showing this slide really, but Enlist or Extend, either one. I've had plots up at Newport. We've got resistant pigweed. It's ALS resistant. It's glyphosate resistant. This is one application in drill beans. Man, it does a great job. It's incredibly clean. It's great. How many modes of action am I using on pigweed in that plot? One. 2,4-D or dicamba. Either way you go. We have glyphosate-resistant Johnson grass documented in Arkansas. Can y'all see that? This plot's pretty clean. How many modes of action am I using on that Johnson grass? And any other grass for that matter in that plot? Glyphosate. Glyphosate. So if we come out with these new technologies and we do this, we ain't learned nothing. We hadn't learned nothing. And I will not recommend them without that residual in front, without warrant, tank mixed early post, to add those kind of things that you can do to add a second mode of action to these products. So that's kind of my update. And I don't know where we're at on time, but we got time for discussion. I'll open it up. I'm interested to hear y'all's thoughts, and for me or Willie, either one.
What do you recommend then if, on that Liberty link, you know, the post shop with Liberty, I mean, what else to put in there besides dual warrant?
That's pretty much what you're down to. You can pick dual warrant, Zidua, an ounce of Zidua. To be honest with you, I still like prefix, early post.
I know, but this shows up.
I understand we already got PPO resistance, but there is no other product that has post activity. So if you don't have resistance, prefix. If you've got too much injury, put it out earlier. Well, I mean, I believe in putting it out as early as possible, actually. I get less injury putting it out on smaller beans than I do on bigger beans, and that's a little bit of reverse thinking, but they grow out of it faster if you spray them when they're coming out of the ground. Plus, you get the pigweed when they're pink, you know, it's tiny, and you get better control. But that's really what we're limited to. We got the group 15 chemistry, basically. Yeah, group 15.
Hey Bob, that group 15 chemistry question comes all the time. How long will it be around? Can you shed some light on that?
That's a good
Why
question.
it's here as long as it is?
Yeah, I just got through reviewing a paper. Jason Norsworthy is looking at some group 15 chemistry for rice, a new mode of action for rice. And I think worldwide there's either been four or five documented weeds resistant, and none of them are in the U.S. So right now, there's not a lot of concern over that resistance. But yeah, if, you know, that there is a risk of heavily relying on too much dual, too much Zidua, too much warrant. That's why I like having the Metribuzin in there, or a product like Boundary, or Make Your Own, or whatever you want to do. But putting those two together is affordable. It's hard to avoid no resistance pressure at all. Now, you know, if you don't have any resistance on your farm and you use Boundary, which is dual Metribuzin followed by Liberty Prefix, man, you're really, if you don't have any resistance starting out and you're using that program, that's 4 modes of action against pigweed. You're probably not going to get resistance. I mean, knock on wood, mark that down that I said that, but I mean, that'd be tough for a pigweed to overcome. But when you've already got a bunch of resistance started, no matter what you do, something has to go out last, you know, and it's probably going to be Liberty, you know, the way it's looking. Unfortunately, I suspect, and Clay's already got his head down between his legs, face turning red. But we're going to over-rely on Liberty. I can tell you what we're going to do. We're going to put it out. We're going to put it out again. We're going to put it out again. And we're probably going to have Liberty-resistant pigweed if we don't move that residual to the front, tank mix some warrant dual type tank mixes early post. That's what we're going to have to do to fight resistance in that scenario. But right now, that Group 15 chemistry is a mitotic inhibitor. It works right as that seed is germinating. There's not a lot going on in that plant. I'm no physiologist or herbicide biochemist, but if you think about all the mechanisms and pathways and things going on in a mature plant, during that seed germination, there's only a few things going on, and it really hammers mitosis. It's a mitotic poison, so overcoming that's difficult, and we've heard that before. I'm not saying it's impossible. There are a couple already documented, but it's pretty rare right now, so I feel pretty good about it.
On the PPO, you got a question right here for me.
Well, so you said Liberty plus dual warrant, but again, that's not really targeting the same weeds, 2 modes of action, right? It's don't work weeds. Dual warrant is going to provide free activity.
Right.
The Liberty is going to control what's up.
What's up?
So here's, it's hard to, I mean, we can't disagree that it's always best to go after the weeds either germinating or already up, the 2 modes of action. But from a grower standpoint, that's, you know, twice the cost of the chemistry. What we've done with BTs is we've stacked, and then we removed the ability to even use the single traits themselves and only use the stack. You know, you see us going that way with herbicide use. You see where I'm coming from? I mean, how much value, resistance management value is it if we push the system and say we always have to use 2 modes of action?
Right.
You see where I'm coming from?
What you're talking about, Walt, is pre-mix strategy only,
Yes.
because that's the only way you can do that.
Yes.
And I think that's the way to go, but getting everybody to do it ain't gonna happen, unfortunately.
It's tough, even if you look at Enlist. Honestly, I would rather have glufosinate 2,4-D. I mean, it's 2 modes of action with no resistance. It's, you know, that would do what you're saying to do, but contractually,
Right.
lawsuit-wise, there's all kinds of things getting in the way. It's good chemistry, it works great together.
Well,
It's probably synergistic on endangered species, though. Too soon.
My point in this, though, is I don't think anybody in this room would disagree. The problem I think we create is we don't know really what we can guarantee from a resistance management standpoint doing that. And my contention is that managing resistance to bugs or weeds is a lot like me shooting far off. And that is, know I can do that, but it's just that I never have. So we keep throwing out these solutions. What I think we have to be careful with is sometimes our solutions become part of EPA regulatory.
I think it's
we want.
it's a slippery slope to me because I'm the type that I don't like the government meddling in what we do. I don't want them to come out with regulations that say they have to stack these or pre-mix these. I just, there's something in me that says that's big government needling in our affairs, but that is the only real way to, you know, to make sure that they don't do this right here. And the other way, you know, the companies can do something about this, and I didn't make it to the Dow meeting, but I've been in other Dow meetings, and my understanding is Enlist Duo, the price will be, you know, fairly comparable to generic Roundup and 2,4-D, so there won't be this inclination to go make your own and have it drift everywhere. I think the companies, by keeping the cost reasonable, I know they got to recoup their investment, I understand that, but keeping this reasonable to where they can afford, you know, the other mode of action to go with it is something that they can do. Anthony's shaking his head, he's not gonna be reasonable.
That doesn't matter, beans being cheap, a farmer is going to gravitate
Yeah.
to the most economical system on his farm,
Yeah.
trying to survive.
Six-
It don't matter.
$6 beans, this happens, $12 beans, put whatever you want under it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I understand. So the economics drive that decision as much as anything.
I wish we would only sell pre-mixed product. On a pigweed, I think that's the only way we're gonna break its back.
I agree.
Unfortunately, that involves all the companies getting together and forming some kind of consortium to do that, and that's like almost
We need more growers like Willie that see the value of it up front. I would say in the long term, we save money. I argue that in the long term, by putting a boundary under this, in the long term, you save money because that year that it crashes, like it did for my farmer in Gregory, he lost everything on 80 acres. So he was getting by cheap for 2 or 3 years and getting a little premium for conventional beans. But that year that it crashed, it blew that out of the water. That $10 or $12 or whatever he was saving and the extra buck a bushel he was making, that every $300, $400, $500 loss on that, whatever it is for an acre of beans, I have no idea. Whatever he lost, he didn't cut that figure. And I've seen that happen time and again. We saw it with Roundup Ready, like down there at Widener. That dude lost $400 or $500 the year that it finally crashed, you know. So if we can educate guys and get them to understand that, that might help.
And all of this
Sorry,
pressure,
that falls on us, I guess.
and all of this pressure, your optimal rate of mooring would be 24 or 32 posts.
We got the Monsanto guy in the back. I'll refer to him on that.
Warren weighs 48 ounces, actually, it's 3 pints.
3 plants.
That's the X-ray,
This is 21 days post plant.
48 ounces.
You
He's
said
using a
21.
half X-ray.
I mean, it twice, I'm just looking for.
24. And then 24 again. 24 twice.
So what's your question?
Does it work?
It's working for him, I guess, yeah,
But the discretion is on him.
I can't argue with his success.
And we rotate now, most of our field are rotating, I think that does have a lot.
Yeah, the rotation.
We're rotating that
We're
chemistry.
past our time. We're past our time. Thank y'all. There's a sign-up sheet in the back. Thank you.